Everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I'm just doing this video as kind of not a reaction, but a concern that I've had today with watching Eli the Computer Guy's video about how the pandemic may last another 4 or 5 years as far as lockdowns and social distancing and masks and all that. And as far as the economic stuff as well, of course, bearing in mind that the economic stuff would have outlasted the pandemic stuff nevertheless anyways. So now I think he makes some good points. This isn't a video reaction as just a reflection upon that analysis. And I guess there have been some articles, and like my earlier video about what if it's endemic, it's kind of addressing this point too. So there are a lot of people postulating now that this could last way beyond the initial estimates. And for those in the more conspiracy-minded thought process, they would say, I told you so, they're going to try to milk it as much as they can. That's another thought, which is pretty relevant, actually. Unfortunately, it's a relevant thought. There's also, thoughts that this could be, used to have some type of great reset and all that, the conspiracy stuff, you've probably heard about, ranging from, more mild conspiracy thought about it, which I share that point of view at this point in time about how it's been used and abused by the powers that be to facilitate more economic and authoritarian control over the populace, regardless of where you stand on, the severity, the way they've done it, especially in the United States. Maybe, other places, like I've said, have done different things, and sometimes have been better, and sometimes have been worse. So, but some thoughts about this. Well, first of all, let's go back a ways, and I'm just going to tell a little personal story. So this last year, since December or January 2020, in response to a breakup that I delved really deep into the New Age movement, probably more than I had in the past. In fact, I'm still kind of grappling in that middle of that movement and trying to figure out what my way forward is with all that stuff, honestly, as far as the occult and New Age stuff, which I find really fascinating. And my whole life I have been fascinated by it. I've always been kind of into it. So I got into manifestation stuff because clearly, I wanted to reconcile with my one of my former partners, and I got more into that kind of stuff, and I got more into these types of thinking because I was really down and depressed. Early February 2020 was probably one of the lowest points in my life for various reasons, which I may talk about more in my videos to come. But the situation was that I also got into a lot of like divination kind of stuff. So ironically, that ex that I'm speaking of, she actually was into tarot and the occult a little bit too, which is pretty interesting when I think about it. She did my tarot a couple times, but it's kind of funny. So the situation is that I got into these astrologers, and a lot of their stuff, like I used to think like a lot of them were just hucksters, and there probably wasn't really real. There might be some, anecdotal truth to some of it, but a few of these astrologers were really legit, like the Astrology podcast and Austin Kopik and Lada Dunsheva and others like that. I got into in the last, probably the last 6 months. Got really deeply into that stuff. But in June, there's this archetypal explorer guy or woman, or I don't know what they, what gender they are, but they kind of had an influence on Astrology podcast and kind of helped them with some of their charts and stuff. And they started predicting the end of the pandemic as, starting in January of 2021 or December of 2021 will start to go down. Um, or at least like that's what the Saturn and Pluto conjunction would start to go. The way that they're aligned would go down, and then that would influence the whole pandemic going down. And then you see this graph, a steep decline, and they matched it up with these graphs that they had done before with Saturn Pluto conjunctions of 2020, and other than like a little bit of lag of time, like weeks, probably about 2 weeks to a month, they were spot on with these cases and stuff of the virus. And I found it really fascinating. People can argue all sorts of stuff about that, but at the same time, watching that podcast and then seeing them show these charts, now it does create a conundrum, because there's that optimistic kind of new age side of myself that wants things to get better and follows that crazy, crazy shit like that. And then there's also the doom and gloom media and all these people. So I think it's an optimistic thing that these astrologers are predicting. Do I think it's real? I don't know, but it seems to be aligned with what's happening now the last couple of weeks. So when we hear about these new variants and all this stuff, I'm like, well, we're clearly turning a corner if you look at the cases, and it has nothing to do with the vaccine, because the vaccine has not been distributed all that much. It's just a natural course of a virus. If you study epidemiology, how enough people become infected, they become immune, and they can't get it a second time, or it's harder to get a second time. I think with this one, it's not necessarily guaranteed, but it is more difficult to get a second case because you have developed some immunity, or if you have some natural born immunity. So we're going to probably, if we see this happen 2 weeks from now, if we continue to see the cases plummet, then the variant thing is definitely some type of fear tactic imposed by the media to whatever their agenda is with that. And it doesn't mean that it's not real. I'm just saying, like I said in a previous video, it's like they were drumming that up. I mean, they're focusing on that, but it's like, what is the real truth about that? But anyways, back to the original purpose of this video. So we're talking about 4 years. This guy, Eli, the computer guy, his video says, like, there's an article in New York Times. Ironically, New York Times has said all sorts of stuff about the virus. I mean, there's been articles and op-eds about how a huge percentage of people are already immune, T-cell immunity or whatever. And then there's been other articles saying, oh, what if, nobody's immune, whatever. It's just like, it's like kind of that shifting goalpost. Trust the science. People say trust the science. What science? So when we look at this situation, how it follows through on what's going on right now, it's a lot of confusion, I'd say. I do fear that it's going to be endemic, and then people are not going to make the right choices about it as far as our society and culture and civilization itself. People are going to say, oh, oh, these new variants are out there. It's 2023, and, this is a fear that we have. Cases are, there's, X number of people dying who are at X age, probably an older age, of course, just like any flu season. 60,000 people die from COVID in a 6-month period, and then we're locking shit down again because that's what happens. Where you're not allowed to visit your relatives. They do another lockdown. You can't do this. You can't go to, you can't do open mics or shows. You can't go, a certain number of people are allowed to your house forever, perpetuity, over and over again. just because of this fucking shit. It's like, who's going to stand for that? Who should stand for that? I certainly will not stand for that myself. I will not. I will not wear a mask after a certain point in this whole thing. I mean, I'll say one exception. If I see people dying in the fucking street, I'm saying like after this, spring, summer, and they just, if they move the goalposts too much, I'm just gonna stop, because I've had it. I've had it with this shit. If they keep moving the goalposts for, especially for arbitrary reasons, and I'm not saying it's arbitrary reasons, but if you look at the numbers, where they're trying to tell people about these new variants, and they're trying to say that it's, oh my god, it's more, oh, it's like, well, if a couple of months pass, or a couple of weeks, we're still seeing the decline of cases, and they still try to use that as excuse, they still try to move the goalposts, then I'm not going to have it. I'm not going to be going for that. I trust the science. I trust the science that if there's only like 200 cases a day by summer, that the chances of me catching this shit, or catching a bad variant, I'm gonna talk about countrywide in the United States, 200 cases a day. Let's just say that happened. It's very slim to none. And I'm not gonna fucking wear a mask at that point. I'm not gonna wear a mask. I don't wear a mask outside, like I've said. I'm not gonna stand for this shit. I mean, I'm gonna move to Florida especially if they remain the last free state in the United States, like as far as like being able to go to concerts and stuff. I'm not gonna stand for this shit anymore. I'm not going to go for 4 years. And, like this article in New York Times are saying, we might have to deal with this for years, or the president of Singapore or something like that. Like, no, I'm not going to stand for that. I'm going to rebel. I'm not going to stand for it. I will be revolting with whoever. I'm not saying I'm going to join like a fucking militia or something, or some crazy shit like that. But I'm saying, I will be revolting against it. I'll open a bar and, have people in there, I'll do whatever I need to do, civil disobedience for the most part. I'll be protesting it. I won't be accepting this. I won't go lying down, especially if it's for ridiculous reasons. Because I do believe that there are some agendas here. I'm convinced now. It took me almost a year, to really be convinced that there's an agenda, but I think there is. And I'm not sure if it's a more like less sinister agenda, like money. I think I'm leaning towards that, money and power and authoritarian control. Just like with 9/11. 9/11 was a real event. A lot of people died in those buildings, but it was also foreknowledge, and it was used to control people. Both those things can be true. This virus can be bad and kill a certain amount of people, but can still be used as authoritarian control mechanism. The two things aren't mutually exclusive, regardless of what the media and the politicians tell you. So no, I'm not going to lie down and stand for this stuff for another year, especially if the criteria are ridiculous. If it's based on ridiculous, some would say it's already based on ridiculous criteria. There's some truth to that. I mean, you look at 1957. They never closed down, and the population was way less, and they didn't even count deaths the same way with the previous pandemics at all. And the proof is on the World Health Organization itself. There's a little thing, little blurb that says, well, in most situations with previous pandemic influenzas, cases were estimated. It's like, and if death wasn't, if they thought it was another cause, they wouldn't list it as a flu death. It's like, now they're counting stuff a low battery, counting stuff differently now. And a lot more people. There was an article I read that said there might have been 10 times more deaths that were counted in 2009 from swine flu than were counted, which is interesting, because they changed the fucking number. They changed the way they count. And why are they doing that? Unanswered questions. I don't have an answer. And, you know, if I don't have an answer, my first thought is there's an agenda. And I'm not sorry for apologizing about that. But one of the things the astrologers say um, that is actually pretty relevant, though, too, is that now we're in a different age. And one of those, and I guess the next 2 years, are an age of rebellion and revolt. Because Saturn's in Uranus. I guess February 17th is supposed to be some kind of a big event. Not sure what it's going to be, of course, but, you know, around that date, apparently. So, yeah, those are just some thoughts. I'm not going to follow up on, you know, listening to this shit too much longer. I can't fucking deal with it. I'm a human being. I have to connect with people. By the way, I just had some, like, huge, like, spicy salsa, so I don't have the coof. But yeah. So I mean, I'm not gonna deal with that shit anymore. I'm not gonna fucking live as a fucking slave. I'm not gonna live where I can't follow my dreams of playing music live or doing open mic comedy live. I know some of my stuff's not that funny on this channel, but I have written written comedy before. It wasn't too bad. It's not terrible, but it's not as terrible as people might think. But you know, I'm not gonna like destroy my dreams because of this fucking thing. And I refuse to accept 4 or 5 years. I refuse to accept this 4 or 5 years thing. I'm not going to accept it. It's not going to. It's. I refuse to accept it. And you know, maybe because the astrology charts say it's going in, it's following through on what they predicted. Maybe that means, oh, I'm going to believe in that. But I'm going to believe in something. Fuck that. I will believe that this is where this is ending. You know. I choose to believe that. I choose to believe that we're on the decline. And the numbers don't, you know, aren't contradicting that. So, coming up pretty soon, by the way, this is unrelated, but I may actually have some t-shirts that I'll be selling. Not really t-shirts associated with this channel or my persona or whatever, but just some t-shirts people might like. Probably going to list them, and once I have them done, there's one there's some really, I think it's some funny shit. It's stuff, I guess it is kind of related to this channel, because I'll just show you when I'm done with them. Hopefully I'll be selling them on this channel. I mean, I will link to them in the description on some of the videos once I'm done. I actually tried to do a t-shirt company about 4 or 5 years ago, and it kind of failed. But I don't really care about doing a company. I'm just going to sell some t-shirts and just these ideas, these puns, and these humorous situations. So that's about all.